Big fan of Malden, yeah.
And I saw Mike LaChance on there. I can't believe it was like in a coat and tie and like the picture is moving. So you really might have a coat and tie on.
Yep, I do.
Nice.
Well, Mitch, you can start. Brian's connecting, so you know. We're missing, and I mean, we're missing Ruth though, so you know.
Oh, since we're sort of killing time, I'm in French Lick, Indiana. Sunrise is at 10 to 8 in the morning. And for us, that's still on Central Time. Mentally, it's like the day's half over, and now it's sunrise. So,
Yeah.
Morning, Brian.
Hi, Brian.
Morning.
All
I don't know if I'm running late or if I'm early because the email says 7:15.
You're right on time.
We're on Brian time, so whenever you get here, we're ready. All right. You got that flag handy, Mr. Robinette?
What's half of 4?
Let's keep that tradition going. Let's start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all for being here. Before we introduce our guest speaker, which we all know very, very well, is there anybody that has an announcement for the club?
We will need a program for next week, or I will find something. It may not be.
I have an idea, Dave.
Okay.
So I got to pursue something, and then I will let you know in the next 2 days.
Sounds good. No problem.
general club members may not know this, but every Monday morning I put a memo out to all the club officers throughout the district featuring a club. And as in random order, next week is Norwood Rotary Club. And I generally ask the secretary, the president, to come up with a couple good paragraphs of what you've been doing. And I know I kind of know it. As an example, last week or the other day, I featured Sykeston. And the president, Mike, down there's a fabulous guy doing great things, but he sent me like 7 words. That's not quite enough to make a newsletter. So Darlene Reed down there sent, I think, 3 paragraphs, beautifully written. I didn't have to change a thing. She had it all in the right layout, and I'm not an English major, so anyway, it's just pretty much print ready. So I'll be looking to our club to have something by Saturday that I can get to Mr. Robinette, and I add some things, and then Dave adds some things. And oh, real quick, Dave, before I forget, I want to come out to a district-wide special edition newsletter to every Rotarian, the Polio and Polio Now edition, because it bears saying. So anyway, that's all I have. Thank you, everybody, and I'll get out of the way.
Thanks, Tom. Anybody else? All right. Has Jack joined us, or is he not making it?
He's not on yet. And he's usually early.
Yeah. All right. Well, without any further ado, so we don't waste Dr. Kilbride's time, Jack Williams had asked Dr. Kilbride to join us this morning and give us an update on how things are going at Ritenour. So with that, we want to turn it over. And, Dr. Kilbride, you have the floor.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mitch. Boy, it's nice to see you, and it's nice to see everybody. I'm Zooming from my house. And so in Ritenour, we've been fully virtual up until this last week. With the leadership of teachers and principals, we got our students at the Early Childhood Center, along with students in kindergarten, and then 1st through 3rd grade are back to in-person. That started last Wednesday, and it's continuing on this week up through third grade. So happy to report that we've got students back in schools, and we're off to a great start. No issues to this point, knock on wood. We've got students back in the hybrid model, so about class sizes of between 8 and 11 are back in person. And then we've got a large number of students that took advantage of our Ritenour Virtual Academy, which is the virtual option where the students continue to learn from home and the teachers are fully virtual. So an exciting time in Ritenour in realizing that for a lot of our students, since this last week is the first time that they've been back in person to school since the 17th of March. So time has just absolutely flown. It's forced us to do our work very differently as opposed to before. But happy to share that there's some things that we're realizing that a better way to do things that we've learned during this pandemic. That even when we do get back to full 5 days in person, there's some things that we're going to continue. And one example is the work of our wellness teams. Instead of just having a school having a counselor, now every school has a wellness team. So it's made up of counselors. If the school has a social worker, that also includes like our refocused room teacher assistants. It also includes our SROs. And so instead of just one person having the responsibility, we have these wellness teams that are at the elementary school are made up of 6 people. At the high school is made up of 12 to 14 people, and they meet twice a day around an identified group of students that are either not logging on or through contact, they've identified there's significant issues going on in the home. And so instead of just one person going out to the home, there's a team of people going out. We see that it's just much more effective and efficient to have collaborators working together around supporting kids. So definitely a challenging time, but we're finding things, strategies to do the work better. So with all that being said, I've got a presentation this morning, and I'll pull it up here to share with everybody. And please feel free to ask questions throughout. I realize we're all doing so much through Zoom. Sometimes it can be a little cumbersome to ask questions during a presentation. You're free to do that. I'll also, after the presentation, stop for any kind of questions you have. So we're guided by our district vision. We work to partner with parents in the community to produce graduates who will become productive citizens and lead lives of personal integrity and fulfillment. Our mission is focused on every student to ensure that they think critically, solve problems, and develop the knowledge and skills necessary for success in our diverse and global society. So back on the 17th of March, the Ritenour School District, much like every other school district in the St. Louis County, closed due to the pandemic. Over the course of the next several months, instruction was fully virtual. Teachers did an amazing job back in the spring. The 2 months of the spring was an emergency situation, and it was an emergency situation. We didn't have as much advanced planning, and so the teachers just stepped up and did a great job. Did a great job stepping up and did in an emergency situation. Hold on 1 second, please. I'm sorry about that. The joys of presenting from home. My apologies. So the teachers stepped up, did a great job in our 2 weeks, or excuse me, the 2 months, April and May of last year. But over the course of the summer, we had plenty of opportunity to get our plan together so that we could start the year fully virtual. And that's exactly what we did. We pushed the start of the school year back to the 31st of August. We purchased 2,500 additional Chromebook devices and to make our district a fully one-to-one district. And we actually received 787 additional devices just this week because we did ask those families that had the opportunity to use their own device to do so at the beginning if they were willing, because there were delays in the supply chain, because every district being fully virtual put a real strain on technology needs. So happy to say that everything has gone very, very well. And our technology department has just done great work through the process. So this is the timeline. 17th of March was our last day of school. We first announced a closure through spring break. That was through April 3rd. And then working closely with county executive, we made the announcement that we would close mostly through April. And then working on with the county executive again on April 9th, made the decision to stay closed for the entire school year. On May 7th, working with the Ritenour Board of Education, we made the decision to push up the last day of school to the 22nd of May, originally from the 2nd of June. There was a whole lot of, and that decision was based on the fact that there was a whole lot of fatigue among students, families, and staff as we were trying to figure out this new normal and navigate fully virtual instruction. So that's what it looked like back in the spring. Fast forward about 5 months, and here we are today. On the 20th of July, we were the first school district in the region to announce a fully virtual start to the school year. And the rationale for that was we believed if we started off fully virtual, that would allow us to get back to school in person as quickly as possible. We believe that if we had an outbreak that involved students or staff, that would delay our ability to get school back in person. And really the plan for the most part worked. We have had staff members who have been quarantined. We have had some positive cases among staff and students. And out on our website, we did publish a COVID dashboard. It's out on the front page of our website, and you can see it even today, where by school, we track the data around staff and students that are quarantined, also around any positive cases, and it's out there for the public to see. On the 15th, I had mentioned we pushed the start date of the school year back to the 31st of August. This was because we were still waiting for our devices to come in. We had placed the order for 2,500 Chromebooks back in April, and due to the supply chain issues, what normally would have taken 3 weeks to get the devices in was now taking about 3 months. So the devices came in at the end of August, and we quickly moved to get those devices distributed to our students. Much more recently, on the 22nd of August, the Board of Education voted to bring students back kindergarten to 3rd grade in the hybrid format, which is the students that chose in-person learning. The first half of students come on Monday and Wednesday. The other half of students come on Tuesday and Thursday. So really, it splits a class in half, and it results in in-person class sizes of between 8 and 11. And so October 7th, so just this last week, was our first day of in-person. And then throughout the course of this week with 1st to 3rd grade, things are going extremely, extremely well. So we had subcommittees that came together and did a whole lot of work over the summer. It's everybody gets vacation days, but this was a summer. You just did not have the ability to use any of them because there was so much work to be done. So I'm so proud of all the work that was done by members of the subcommittee and all the Ritenour staff to prepare for the start of this year. We had teams that came together around social distancing. If you walk into our schools, you'll see students with 6 feet of space between them. You'll see one-way hallways. You'll see a lot of plexiglass in schools. At this point, we are not accepting visitors to our buildings, and the goal is to prevent any kind of mixing of students with other people. The experience is different. It's very different from what it is normally, but it's all in the name of keeping students safe. Our virtual learning program, we started a separate, we're calling it a separate school. Really, it's a separate program. It's the Ritenour Virtual Academy. It's a fully online option that even when the pandemic passes, it's going to continue to be a choice option for students and staff in the Ritenour School District. So every year, if instead of coming in person, a family wishes to have a fully virtual option, they'll now have that option moving forward in the form of the Ritenour Virtual Academy. We've added 2,500 plus 787. We've added almost 3,300 additional technology devices for students this year, and all of that has gone very well. Our athletics and activities program, we've placed a focus on academics. And unlike some other districts, we've made the decision that if we can't have students back in school in person, our athletics teams would not be competing. So we started working early with a cluster of districts that bought into that vision. So the Pattonville School District, Hazelwood, Ferguson Florissant, University City. We started partnering together to create an alternate fall season, which is going to start in February. So from February through the beginning of April, all of the fall sports that we would be holding are going to be held at that time. So we're going to be playing football in February through the month of March into the beginning of April, and we've got a group of school districts that are going to go along with it. So our football schedule, volleyball schedule, all of that's already created. It's just at a different time. And the rationale for that is there was a lot of uncertainty around MISHA about trying to go with the fall season. And the concern was if you start playing the season, then potentially you're locked into that season. So if there's an outbreak, kids would end up getting shorted, or worst case scenario, kids could get sick. So it was a tough decision, but we ultimately erred on the side of safety for students and staff, and we decided to push our athletics into the spring. Our winter season will be starting in middle of November, and that's basketball and wrestling and the winter sports. We're keeping up with the same expectation of academics first. If students at that point at Ritenour High School are not back in person, then the season would be delayed. The moment that students come back in person, then the athletics and activities could resume. And one of the last things that I'll speak on is the commitment to the whole child and the transportation department. So since the end of March, we've been delivering food to Ritenour families at their bus stops every day. So what that looks like is in the morning, our food service team comes together with our transportation department. They deliver food on their routes on a daily basis. That looks like upwards of about 1,800 meals delivered per day to Ritenour families. Ritenour families, they just go to their normal bus stop in the morning at an assigned time, and they pick up their meals for the day. Over the course of the closure, 64,000 meals delivered to Ritenour families. So something we're very, very proud of. Another group that we partner with to address the issue of food insecurity is the Ritenour Co-Care Food Pantry. The Co-Care Pantry is now in their new location. That's at the Husky Support Center. It's in the former Overland Baptist Church on Midland Avenue. So the Co-Care Pantry has partnered with the National Guard to distribute a week's worth of groceries to families. They've done that throughout the summer, and they continue to do it here in the fall. And they're doing great work, serving upwards of 1,500 families per month. Here is that Husky Support Center. So if you've driven by it, you see the new sign. There's a lot of work that's going on at the Husky Support Center right now. The Board of Education just approved a Phase 2 package that is going to put fencing and sound and light abatement up all the way around the center to support the neighbors that live all around. Also, in that package, we are putting sprinklers in the basement because we're going to have centralized district storage in the basement of the building that will allow us to be more efficient. And then finally, as Jerry Nolan is here on the Zoom this morning, Jerry was the chair of the Proposition S Bond Issue Committee. Happy to report the community passed Prop S on June 2nd. I had my doubts as the polling date was pushed back from April to June in the middle of the pandemic. But the Ritenour community came through, passing the $19.5 million zero rate change, also no tax increase is the language that was used in the past. $19.5 million no tax increase bond issue, with the highest yes vote in the history of the district at 80.45%. We only needed 57 and change. So a great win for the district to allow us to make sure that our facilities continue to be a source of pride in the community. Now, some projects that are a part of that bond issue. We'll have a new weight room and wellness center at Ritenour High School. It's something that is very much needed because currently the weight room is located down in the basement, and it's a safety issue due to the layout of the center. We'll have safety and security upgrades throughout the district. We'll work with a performance contractor to address HVAC needs as well as lighting and energy efficiency changes throughout the district. We'll be upgrading our cafeterias throughout the district to support our effort at wellness and healthy choices for students. And then a lot of asphalt and parking upgrades throughout the district. So thank you to the Ritenour community. Thank you to Jerry Nolan for his leadership and the whole Proposition S committee for doing the great work that they did. So with that being shared, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have this morning.
Hi, Dr. Kilbride, this is Brian. You know, I know this whole thing has been hard for people to figure out what to do, you know, make plans because this is the first time we've done this pandemic type thing. And I know that now the classes are starting to be open back up, and our number of cases are actually higher than they were last spring when we really didn't know anything. How comfortable are you with going forward with the older classes coming in?
Yeah, you know, we look at the data. It's a good question. We look at the data on a daily basis, and the cases are up. Last I checked, positivity rate in St. Louis County was 4.6%. We also look at the transmission rate, the rate of spread. It's at a 1.02 value on an R0 scale, with 1.02 being stasis. Anything above 1.0 indicating an increase in the spread of the pandemic. So we're very plugged into the data. You know, one of the things that was real instructive to me is even when we were fully virtual, we were still seeing staff members and students getting positive diagnosis and having to quarantine because what we see is the virus is being spread in the community. It's being spread through close contact with family. It's being spread through restaurants. It's being spread through things that are outside of schools. And even in St. Charles County schools and schools elsewhere that are in person and that also have athletics, they're seeing one of the big vectors is for spread is around athletics, not during competition, but during the gatherings. So we feel good about our decision to postpone athletics, not the competition part of athletics as a risk, but the gatherings of kids as a risk. So we feel good about that decision. And we also think that we need to get kids back in school for the social emotional benefit. The bottom line is the pandemic is with us and it's going to be with us for some time. And so we always have to be safe. And so the idea that we know it's out there and it's a potential it could happen, we're after the social emotional benefits for students to get them back into school. And the data and the feedback that's coming out, the transmission student to student in school is extremely low. And in fact, I can't recall the last time I heard of a case where it was transmitted during the school day. But, when you hear of St. Charles County school districts and they're having to quarantine large numbers of students, generally we're hearing it's through the athletic side of things. So, a quick answer, always a risk, but we're trying to take a measured risk as we get kids back into school. But if we do see a spike, the idea that we would go back to in-person instruction, the idea that we'd go back to fully virtual instruction for everybody, that absolutely could happen.
And Dr. Kilbride, as one who has worked out in one of the school districts in St. Charles County, shall remain nameless. The positivity rate in that district area is 12 point something %. There are 25 to 28 students per class. I commend you for the idea of the hybrid. And I know it's not your idea, but for following that, and 8 to 11 kids, you can actually social distance in a room. The rooms I've been in are 2 feet roughly left to right between desks and about 1.5 feet front to back. No one-way halls, no, everything you described that you're doing. And then you wonder why you have community spread even within the building. So
right.
I want to say, as one who's been through the other direction, thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, David. I appreciate that. And, we've got a great team that went through, like when you walk into one of our classrooms, you can stick both of your arms out side to side and not touch a desk in a lot of cases. And so we've got small numbers of kids in the rooms. We certainly want to have all of our students back in person, everybody that wants it, but we just don't believe we can do that at this time and do it in a safe fashion. And just taking the path of safety to the greatest extent possible.
I'd like to make comments about Courtney, Chris. I have a little family story. I have my 2 grandchildren who are sophomores and seniors were forced to be virtual because of their dad's bone marrow transplant, but he got better, so the doctor said they could go back to school. And my granddaughter is a very level-headed young lady, doesn't get caught up in drama. But after she was didn't want to go back to school, but her family said, you got to do it. And she said, after I got there, I found out I was really a little bit depressed having to stay at home and really look forward to coming back to school. Okay. And I think that's kind of interesting. My grandson, he couldn't wait to get into the school. He didn't like the virtual. But anyway, it's interesting, her comment about, I was really a little depressed.
Well, the thing that we see, about every other day, we walk across the street from the central office and we go have lunch at Chimmy's. That's our time to check in because, you have to stay aware of your social, emotional health, and you have to have people to check in with on a daily basis. And, that's the same thing. Every member of my team, they're saying that about their own kids. The kids want to be back in person. They want to have personal contact. And, when you take time to stop and think when you're learning at home by yourself, in your bedroom, from my perspective, it's just not an appropriate substitute for what education is supposed to be. It's supposed to be with other people. It's supposed to be interactive. And, we've worked to accommodate kids to keep them safe. But, when we start offering more of a choice moving forward, like families will have the choice at semester. Do you want to be back in person or do you want to be fully virtual? We expect there's going to be large numbers of people that are wanting to come back to in person. Now that will be a little bit of a hardship for us because then we'll have to restaff to accommodate kids where they are if we've got large numbers of students coming out of the fully virtual environment. But it's what we're going to do. That's the feedback we're receiving too, Bob. Is just that the wellness teams for those students that are fully virtual, those are really the kids that we have our eyes on for depression, for any kind of negative self-talk or self-harm. It all goes together.
Chris, I'd like to go back to the Proposition S. Had a lot of good people working with me, including you and the board, and everybody kind of let the committee do what the committee wanted to do and thought was best for the district. So thank you for that. Thanks to the community. I was very proud to do that. As you know, I was a little hesitant at first to take something on that soon after retiring, but and it ended up being quite a longer period than I thought, but it was very enjoyable. I'm very proud of that, and I wanted to thank you and the board. I didn't get a chance to speak the other night, thank goodness, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. I mean, it was 80.45% in the middle of a pandemic. It's pretty historic.
I also want to piggyback off Dave, and most everybody in Rotary knows I have two grandsons in school. I have my daughter Bridget and my son-in-law Matt. Bridget was glad to get back with her kids. She was finding that her students were not, first grade students aren't as easily, they're great with the technology, but picking up on things that you've got to be there. So she was a little apprehensive, still is a little bit, but glad to get back for her kids. Jonah, I said, what was the favorite part about your day? And he said, seeing my friends. So, he's in second grade now, and Nolan is flourishing online at the middle school. He's doing a great job. Little communication issues, but as a former middle school teacher, you and I both know that that's middle school. That I think I turned those in. I know I turned those in, but I think he's kind of anxious to get back. I know Matt's ready to get back too, to see his kids and his football players and his baseball players all in person. But I also would like to thank you and the board for being cautious, because it's real. I mean, it's a real thing out there, and I always, in my job there at the school district, felt like safety should be first. And I know you're catching a lot of heat. I was at the board meeting. I heard some of the public comments. I've listened to some of the virtual board meetings. So thank you from a resident, from a lifelong resident. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerry. Yeah, there's a whole lot of engagement on either side of it. And the interesting thing, every bit of it is 50-50. The moment that I hear somebody pushing hard on me to get every student back in person yesterday, there's another person that steps up and speaks on the danger of it. So it doesn't matter what committee it is. It doesn't matter what public comment session during a board meeting it is. The feedback is split almost perfectly 50-50 down the middle, which is what makes this time so difficult, because usually as a leader, you try to build consensus around something. You try to build consensus around a direction that you want to move, and you be strategic. It's just not possible during the pandemic because people are not willing to leave their position. It's either I feel very strongly kids need to be back in person, or I feel very strongly that we need to be fully virtual until the pandemic ends. So very hard to build any kind of consensus. And so that's what's made this one so challenging. And so I do feel very good about the work of our staff. The teachers have just been absolutely amazing. Teachers know what the risks are, but so many are saying, I just need to be back with my students. The students need to be back with each other. Just causes you to get pretty emotional pretty quickly when you think about it. But I feel really good about the work we've done to this point.
Chris, a question for you. Our club has a small budget because we're a small club, obviously. But if there were something that we could do to help the district in terms of spending, you know, a few $100s, maybe as much as $1,000, I don't know. Is there something that the club could do for the district to help out?
You know, and the hotspot connectivity is the biggest, one of the biggest challenges that we have. So as I mentioned, 3,300 additional devices. We partnered with the Pride and Promise Foundation to make 3 of our buses hot to provide Wi-Fi access on a bus that could then, you know, park at a school. And if people get into the school parking lot, they can hit the Wi-Fi. But as the weather is starting to turn, you know, very few people are going to want to be out in a parking lot for an hour or 2 at a time. So the cost for one hotspot, it's the plan that we have, it's $20 per month. And so there's no upfront cost. If the Rotary was interested in making a donation, my thinking is the best benefit to students, $100 would provide 5 hotspots to 5 different families to allow for connectivity. And families that do have hotspots at this point, some cases they've got 3 and 4 different students on that hotspot. And if it's not a graphics heavy program, then they're fine. But if there's a lot of video, it really starts to slow down. So hotspots, we as a district, we quickly ramped up and we've pushed out 700 hotspots to the community, but the need still exists. So that's the greatest need we have right now, Ann.
How would we make a donation towards that, Chris?
You know, Mitch, if you just would want to make a donation directly to the Ritenour School District and in the memo field, write down hotspot donation, it would go directly to Dwight Lindhorst. You know, that would be he'd put it aside in the hotspot account, and then the technology department led by Fred Harlan. What's happening is $20 per month is the cost. We've just got a separate account that goes against those monthly charges. It'd be that simple.
So how many months do you think you'd have to provide the families with the hotspots?
You know, boy, it all depends. You know, there's questions around the vaccine as well, and just the degree to which people are going to feel safe with that. You know, we believe it's at minimum, it's going to be through the end of next school year, through the end of the 21-22 school year. But also with us keeping this Ritenour Virtual Academy option, we know that there's going to be families that are going to want that option that are not going to have stable internet at their homes. So we think the hotspot issue is going to be an issue for us moving forward.
Right. Anything else, folks?
Chris, want to thank you for coming and joining us. Sorry,
Good to see you, Jack.
My bed wouldn't let me up this morning.
Well, that's a weak excuse. Your bed wouldn't let you up.
At any rate, so I apologize for being late, but thank you. I really, really do appreciate you coming in and helping.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you. I had a little pause in my presentation. I don't normally Zoom from home like I'm doing today, but my 9-year-old daughter, Sadie, came down and started wagging her finger at me for talking inside the house. It was waking her up. So I'm Zooming from my backyard. So there was a little pause in the presentation. I apologize for that.
Hey, one quick question, Chris. Is there any, I know that the state wants to be supportive and so forth, but, did we lose you? Oh.
No, I can hear you, Jack. I'm sorry. I just had to put my ear down, please.
Okay. Oh, so how's the state supporting school districts at this point? And what about St. Louis County? How does that happen? What's the support level?
Yeah, you know, we The state, credit to Margie Van Dieven, the commissioner. I think she's done a great job navigating the situation where, she works so closely with the legislature. And again, there's mental models around the pandemic, and a number of the people that Margie has to work closely with are much more on the side of kids just need to be back into school, no social distancing, and so on. So I think she's done a great job of being supportive of districts and making local decisions, while a number of the people she talks to, have a certain view of the virus. State DESE has been supportive, even in regard to attendance. So when students are fully virtual, can't really take attendance. And in the state of Missouri, we're funded based on student attendance. So DESE has moved quickly to come up with alternate methods for capturing attendance and funding schools, and then they've been quite flexible. Craig Larson, who many of you know well, is our DESE area supervisor. Can't say enough good things about Craig and his work of supporting schools. They've done a great job. At the county level, there's a dynamic, and I'll say it's a newer dynamic that's really come up maybe in the last month or so, where there's a little bit of a tug of war that's going on between the council and the executive, and that's clear now in our weekly work with St. Louis County. I think Sam Page has done a great job. He's been very supportive in getting CARES Act funds out to us. As a district, we received about $800,000 in CARES Act funds, and that went directly into PPE for staff, went directly into plexiglass in classrooms. If you walk around to our schools now, you'll see that we've got big shipping containers, at least 2 shipping containers on the campus of every one of our schools. We took out all of the items that can't be disinfected from every classroom. So you can't disinfect a rug, you can't disinfect a couch, anything that is soft seating or rugs or carpets, it all had to be taken out. And it's all placed in those shipping containers. So the CARES Act money that we got from the county made it possible for us to do things like that. But now, as I said in the last month, it's clear there's a difference of opinion as to what school districts should be doing in St. Louis County. So my hope is that the executive and the council will continue to be able to work together, but there's been some indications that might not be the case moving forward. So we've got our eyes peeled with that. We're working closely with the County Department of Health also. The first couple of meetings with the County Department of Health were interesting in that, people had information, but out of a political, due to political pressure, there was perhaps a hesitancy to act right at the beginning. But since that time, couldn't give higher praise to the County Department of Health and the work that they're doing with this massive undertaking. I have a weekly meeting on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. with every one of the school districts that's a part of Education Plus, and Spring Schmidt is a regular attendee at those meetings providing guidance. Just this last week, Rachel Orshon from WashU gave us an update on the vaccine trials. And so I feel like there's a real community has come together to meet the need. And I think that's exactly what you want during a time of crisis. And so county has played a role in that, but just again, hope they're able to continue to work together moving forward.
Chris, when you talk about the fact that, you're talking with health department and county, the county and everything, what is your opinion on if more of the districts, if there was a team approach that every district was kind of doing the same thing in the St. Louis County versus every district having their individual way of approaching it? You think there'd be less confusion, or do you prefer to have the individual district have control?
So certainly this would be much less complex if everybody could lock into a common process and a common vision around education in the time of the pandemic. That's what I was advocating for back in May and June. We need to have a common schedule. So even if it's everybody's going to have a hybrid schedule, it needs to be the same. So if it's going to be 2 days in person and 3 days virtual for a kid, we need to have the same days in person because we've got staff and teachers that have childcare issues. And so, you know, we had a subcommittee that came together for about a month, and then ultimately people just couldn't agree on that. So it's certainly made it more complex around schedules. It's made it more complex around athletics. You know, this is October 14th. About a month ago, there were changes around athletics happening on a daily basis. And so it's not a good place to be. You know, I do believe that, you know, best decisions are generally made at the local level. But even using Ritenour and Pattonville as an example, we share a border. Pattonville is made the announcement about their middle school coming back in person, and we haven't made that yet. So, you know, neighbors are putting pressure on each other, really not purposefully, but that's the result, is you're putting pressure on the neighbors when you make a decision. And all of this really could be avoided if we could have had more of a region-wide response. It's something that we have worked many hours at doing, but there, again, it just gets back to there is no consensus around it. Like in those Wednesday meetings, of the 23 districts in St. Louis County, 16 of them have plans for students coming back in person. 7 of them have no plans for students to come back in person, and they don't plan on doing so at least through the end of the first semester. So then, you know, those districts, those 7 are receiving a whole lot of pressure from a portion of their constituents to allow that option. You know, in 23 years in education, certainly never more challenging time that I've had in my career, and I don't know that it'll ever be this challenging again, but I'll knock on wood, I guess.
We hope not.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we thank you, Chris, for taking your time to fill us in. We're very proud of the Ritenour School District and everything that's going on. I think your leadership has been outstanding, sir. So
I appreciate that, Mitch. Thank you.
Yeah, we thank you for your friendship. And it's been, we're hoping that somewhere along the line, there'll be a normal that we can all get back to. So thank you again for everything you're doing for the district, for our kids. We appreciate that you're looking into the safety and the best interest of our children. That's what matters.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, Mitch, and thank you, and thanks to everybody. Hopefully next time this can be back in person. Looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you.
Bye, my friend.